Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to the fifth session of Sunoikisis Digital Classics for the Fall 2020 program. This session is on web annotation and is being led by my colleagues Monica Berti from the University of Leipzig and Valeria Vitale from the British Library. You know them both very well, of course, if you've ever seen Sunoikisis before, because they are ubiquitous in this platform. Those of you who are watching this live on YouTube, you'll see a live chat feature in the top right-hand corner of your screen, or possibly just below the video, depending on what device you're using. Please feel free to ask questions, say hi, make any comments, and in general, join the discussion at the end of the session. I'm using that feature, and we'll pay attention to that and respond to anything we see there. If you're not watching this live, welcome anyway. Please feel free to use this video in any way you like in your teaching or learning or other experience. I believe that apart from any slides that obviously contain copyrighted material, the video itself is Creative Commons licensed, as all Sunoikisis materials are. So you are not only permitted, but encouraged to reuse this content in any way that might be useful to you. I think that's all by way of introduction. We'll have a bit of discussion at the end. We'll talk about the suggested exercises for this session to follow, which are more than suggested if you're a student. But if you're watching this for your own edification, then it's optional. So I think Monica is starting us off. I will hand over to you.
Okay, Gaby, thank you very much. And okay, so here we are, and I think, okay, my screen is shared. Okay, yeah. Excellent. So this is, yes, session 5, web annotation. So a few weeks ago, we had on October 15 in Sunoikisis a session about introduction, markup. And in that session, we already mentioned the concept of annotation. That session was about a few markup languages, HTML, Markdown, wiki text, but we also mentioned annotations, and of course, annotating text is related, of course, also to markup. And so this is the reason why in this session, in our class outline, we refer back to that session. But today, the focus is about web annotations. And the idea today is to talk a bit about textual annotations. And we have selected a few tools, a few web-based tools for performing textual annotations. Of course, in Sunoikisis, our focus is on historical text, historical languages, and but today we will also show tools that can be used also for contemporary languages and contemporary text. And we have Valeria, Vitale, and I. We have selected these tools, and I'm going to present WebAnno and INCEpTION, and then Valeria will talk about Hypothes.is, Recogito, mentioning also linked open data and the Open Annotation Collaboration model. And in this slide, okay, you have simply a screenshot from the class outline in GitHub. But I can start with a few slides with basic, I have to say, concepts concerning text annotation. Text annotations can be described in a simple way as additional information for a document, a text, or a collection of text, a corpus of text, and usually they relate to a word, a phrase, or a passage of the document, and in order to annotate corpus or a text, often we use a controlled vocabulary, basically a tag set, and I will talk about that later. And this vocabulary usually is domain specific, in the sense that the first question you need to ask when annotating is, of course, what is your domain, the kind of language you are annotating, and also your focus, as we will see later. We can have different types of annotations, and today there are many projects for contemporary languages, but also for historical languages, like linguistic annotations. We mainly have linguistic annotations for annotating grammatical function, the word form, the syntax, for annotating lemmatas, chunks of text, etc. Or we can have semantic annotations, including, for example, name entities, and we already covered this aspect in other sessions. In Sunoikisis, then we can also represent relations among entities, like dependencies, for example, for syntactic annotations or coreferences. And I will go back to these concepts later. Usually we have in the community, in computational linguistics, but also in digital classics, we have specific tag sets for these kinds of annotations. But of course, you can also produce your custom annotations. It's better to use, of course, controlled vocabularies if it is possible, but there are situations where we need to produce custom annotations. In that case, of course, it's important to document your annotations and your tag set. I have a very, very simple example here in English with 4 short sentences, an example for part of speech tag annotation, where we can, as you can see here in this case, we can use a part of speech tag set where we annotate basically our tokens. In this case, we can annotate pronouns, adverbs, verbs, also the punctuation. In this case, you have, okay, the sentences in the upper part of the screen, and then below you have single token with these tags, these labels. These are conventions, of course, used in computational linguistics for, as you can see, you can understand, because they are human readable, where we can annotate pronouns, adverbs, verbs, and also the punctuation. So this is a simple way for visualizing annotations in the text. And we can also perform other kinds of annotations, like in this case with the same sentences. We can also perform coreferencing. In this case, we refer, for example, these pronouns in red to a noun. Okay, both you in this case are referred to mermaid, and we can annotate something like this. We can refer these pronouns to a specific token in the text. Okay, this is a very simple introduction to, of course, to text annotations. We can annotate more complex things, and we can do that in different languages, including historical languages. And today, as an example, I'm presenting 2 web-based tools, WebAnno and INCEpTION. Okay, the first one, WebAnno. WebAnno is a web-based platform tool originally developed for the Clarin community. And the interesting thing is that WebAnno was not born for a specific project. For example, later today we will see Recogito, that is a very powerful tool for annotation, but originally was developed starting from a specific project for historical languages. In this case, WebAnno was developed as a general purpose web-based annotation tool. As you can read, this is a screenshot from the web page of WebAnno. And this tool was and still is meant for a wide range of linguistic annotations. Of course, there was a high need and demand for linguistic annotations. This is why this is an important part of WebAnno, because we have many projects for producing linguistic annotations, including various layers for morphological, syntactical, and semantic annotations. But WebAnno gives the possibility also to produce custom annotation layers and to, for example, to produce also semantic annotations. And the other interesting thing is that WebAnno is meant for distributed annotation, so different people can annotate the same text, the same corpus of text, and is a multi-user tool supporting different roles, as we can see here. I have a few slides for summarizing the main characteristics of WebAnno. WebAnno is a tool where you can have a user and project management, in the sense that you can be a user annotating text, or the administrator of a project. And then the other interesting thing is that there are different annotation styles, layers, features, and tag sets, and we will see later what I mean by that. And then also in terms of project types, of course, the main idea is to annotate text, but it's possible also through the WebAnno to perform corrections manually and semi-automatically, and also to check and to merge also annotations. Another thing, as I was saying before, is that WebAnno is a tool for distributed annotation projects, and it includes several linguistic annotations, tag sets, that are very useful, so you don't have to upload your tag set, but you can also produce your custom annotations. And the main way it works is by layers. So annotations are organized by in layers, and I have examples then in the slides. And the other interesting thing is this concept of distributed annotations. So this idea to have annotators geographically distributed, and in Sunoikisis, in our sessions, we mention many times the idea to have collaborative environments for working on our text, on our corpora, and this is an example where basically annotators are geographically distributed, they are stored on a server, and each member can access the data with different roles as an annotator or as an administrator, etc. And there are also different permission levels, because of course we can have a user, different users who annotate the text. Then we have, for example, another role, the curator, who can compare and merge annotation, monitor the annotation progress, especially for big projects where we have different users and many text. And then, of course, the administrator who sets up the project, changes settings, upload documents, upload guidelines, and this is a very important part, and can also select tag sets and layers, etc. I'm summarizing these things, but you can find a complete full documentation about WebAnno online. There are different guidelines for users, for administrators, and for developers. You can download WebAnno for a local installation or a server installation. Of course, in that case, you need some technical skills, but anyway, the project is really well documented. And about layers, so the main component is to annotate using layers, as is done in computational linguistics, and you can produce multiple annotations for the same document. Annotations are organized in layers, and in this slide is a bit small, I'm sorry, but at the bottom of this slide, you can see basically a text arranged in tokens. Of course, the text, you have single tokens corresponding basically to words, and also to the punctuation, which is separated from other words. And the system automatically splits a text also in sentences according to the punctuation. And then we have, in this case, two different layers. So below you have the first layer is the text in tokens, and then we have a first layer. Here you can see on the right the layer of the part of speech tag. Basically is the function of each word in the sentence. In this case, we have these abbreviations, and these are conventions according to specific tags as for computational linguistics for representing nouns, pronouns, verbs, etc. Of course, you have to see the kind of tags that you are using. And then there is a second layer at the top for the lemma, in this case, the lemma corresponding to each token. Okay, so it's quite it's quite simple in this case. And of course, each layer should hold only one annotation, but you can also connect different annotations. So in principle, so the system is easy, but of course, then annotating text can be, of course, is more complex than this example, but the system works quite well. Properties of layers, again, summarizing, where layers usually they have a name. We have, again, conventions. When you choose a layer, you should see if in the community there is already a layer for your specific annotation. You can describe, of course, a specific layer. This is important. And then you can have many layers within WebAnno, and then you can select and enable the layers you need for your specific project. You don't need to enable every layer. And then, of course, you can, for each layer, you can annotate, first of all, the type of layers, a span, where you can select to annotate a single token or multiple tokens, or also a character. Then you can have a chain where you refer a token to another token, like in the case of coreferences that I was showing before, when you connect, for example, pronouns to a specific name in the text. And then you can also represent relations between tokens or tags. For example, this is used a lot for representing dependencies, when you annotate the syntax of the text and you annotate the dependency of specific tokens from the verb or other elements. Okay, so these are the main three types: span, chain, and relation. And well, behavior of layers, of course, you can have a read-only. You can just visualize the layers, and there are many other possibilities like multiple tokens, stacking, and then you can also allow crossing sentence boundary, which is quite important because it happens that you have to go beyond a single sentence. But again, for all these things, you can find a complete description in the guidelines of WebAnno. So this is the first part for WebAnno. INCEpTION is a related tool in the sense that was born after WebAnno, and is supported by the Deutsche Forschungsgemeinschaft. And WebAnno was developed using, INCEpTION was developed using WebAnno, but adding more functionalities, and especially the knowledge management and other query functionalities, because the idea, so given that in WebAnno was used quite a lot, not only in the community of computational linguists, but also in other communities, there was a request for more semantic annotations. And so basically, in a nutshell, INCEpTION is offering different possibilities for, as you can read here, intelligent assistance and knowledge management. Okay. And then I will go back to these later. Also for INCEpTION, you can find the complete documentation online for users, for administrators, for developers. You can download, like for WebAnno, INCEpTION on your local machine, and you can immediately try to use it, or you can have a server installation. And in this case, there is also a demo online. As you can see here, you can try INCEpTION. Of course, you don't have to use this for your projects, but this is a demo for experimenting with various functionalities and also for visualizing examples. There are many examples provided by the developers of INCEpTION. And okay, so I have here a short video, because INCEpTION, the website provides guidelines, documentation, and also a few tutorials on YouTube to see how it works for beginners, I have to say. So I will start this video. Okay. So I'm realizing that you can't, so apparently you can't, I apologize, but they tell me that you can't hear the video. Yes, maybe let's find like this. I apologize for that. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Yes, I apologize for that, because this is an experiment, and let's see if now the video is working. Otherwise, we can skip it.
Hello everyone.
Does it
This video gives you a brief overview of the main areas
Yes, we can hear
of project list, the dashboard pages, the annotation page, the knowledge base page, and project management page. First, we log in. After logging into INCEpTION, you see a list of projects that you can access. Depending on the permissions of your user, you may be able to see buttons to create a new project or to import projects. Here you can also import projects which you can download from our website. We have already downloaded and imported an example project. This project contains a few texts on wine and a small knowledge base on the topic. Before we take a look at the project configuration, let's have a brief look at the annotation interface and the knowledge base page. First, the annotation interface. We open a document from the project. Now we can see the document text, and there are also already some example annotations. With a single click on an annotation, we can select it. Its features become visible. In the right sidebar, the Annotation Detail Editor panel. Here we can make changes to the annotation or delete it. Now let us see how to create a new annotation. First, we select the type of annotation to create and entity. For example, we may want to annotate the mentions of wine. Next, we select the span text where the wine is mentioned using the mouse. This instantly creates a new annotation, and we can edit it in the annotation detail editor panel. In this case, we want to disambiguate the mention. This project comes with an example ontology of wines. The identifier field is linked to this ontology. So when we click into the identifier field and start writing the name of a wine, a drop-down box opens with several suggestions. We choose the matching one to complete the linking. Now let us look at the wine ontology itself. This is the knowledge base page. Here we can explore, modify, and extend the wine ontology. On the left side, we see a tree of the classes contained in the knowledge base. Below that, we see a list of properties that are defined in the knowledge base. When we select a class, we can see its details, such as labels, descriptions, superclasses, and any other statements made about the class. By linking a mention to a knowledge base item, such as a class, we essentially introduce a cross-document coreference. The mentions participating in such a coreference are shown in the Mention tab. When we select an instance, its details become visible on the far right of the screen. Again, there is a Mention panel where we can see all the text mentions referring to this instance. Now finally, let's have a brief look at the project setup. INCEpTION is very flexible, and there are many configuration settings that can be made in an annotation project. We will just skim over the most important ones quickly. On the Details tab, we can see the name of the project and its description. Most of the time, annotation projects are run by a team of annotators. On the Users tab, you can compile your annotation team, assign their roles, such as annotator, curator, or manager. On the Documents tab, you can import text documents to be annotated. INCEpTION supports various file formats. The Layers tab allows to configure the annotation scheme. Every layer has a name and a type, for example, a span or a relation. Each layer can define any number of features. This corresponds to the fields that we have seen in the annotation detail editor panel earlier. For example, we can see here that the named entity layers defines the features, identifier, and value. Features can also have types. We can see here that the type of the identifier feature is concept feature, meaning that it links to a knowledge base. And below, we can configure which knowledge bases it links and which types of items it can link to. This brings us to the end of our video. We have given you a brief introduction into the INCEpTION text annotation platform, its interfaces for text annotation, knowledge management, and annotation scheme configuration. You could now try importing the text of your own and create some annotations. Thank you for watching this video. You can find more videos on INCEpTION on our channel. Please hit the subscribe button to receive updates when we publish new videos introducing new exciting functionalities, use cases, news, or other things.
Okay, so I apologize for the technical.
Hello everyone.
Sorry, I don't.
This video gives you a brief.
I'm going back to my slides. So I wanted just to show you this video because in this video you have a first introduction. There are other tutorials. They are important if you want to start using INCEpTION. It's not difficult, but you have a clear description of how to use the tool. Probably the screen was a bit small, but in any case, you have the link and you can see the video again. And there is a nice interface, and then so you have these different possibilities for selecting your layer, the tag set, and also the part concerning the knowledge base. As you could see before, the example was not about a project concerning classics or historical languages, because also INCEpTION is a tool that can be used by different projects. And in fact, this was a project about wines. But INCEpTION can be used for historical languages. In this slide, I have a screenshot and the link to the formats supported by INCEpTION for importing and exporting data, because, for example, you can import pre-annotated data to visualize it and further annotate it, or you can export your annotations produced in INCEpTION. There is a list here. I'm not going, of course, to talk about every format. There are many formats used in computational linguistics, like the formats of the Conference of Natural Language Learning, but there are other formats. For example, now, this is a new thing, also the TI P5 XML, and we also have the tag set for ancient Greek and Latin Tribank based on the guideline, on the tags that we have for the Perseus Tribanking. So you can use INCEpTION also for morphosyntactic annotations of ancient Greek and Latin text. And in any case, you have a link here, and the documentation is good because for every format, you have a clear description of the format and what you can annotate, what you can represent with that format, according, of course, to your needs and your interests. And then finally, you have not only the documentation and these video tutorials, and in the video, Riccardo Castillo was talking. He's one of the developers of WebAnno and INCEpTION. And there is also a mailing list, a Google group, very active. You can join it for asking different questions about the use of INCEpTION. And the community is really very active, and also the developers are very, very helpful, and so they can help you with using these tools. And finally, I'm just briefly showing you an example, because of course our session is about classics and historical languages. And here I'm referring to a previous session of Sunoikisis that we had in the summer semester. If you go through Sunoikisis, you can find this session where I presented name, entity, recognition, and annotation, and I showed the use of INCEpTION. So you can find the session with the video and other things. In this case, I'm briefly showing you a screenshot from INCEpTION where we have name entity recognition for an ancient Greek text. Probably the screen maybe is small, but unfortunately I can't zoom in, but this is an idea to see the environment of INCEpTION. In this case, we can visualize basically a paragraph with different 5 sentences in ancient Greek, and this is based on pre-annotated data that I uploaded, and we can visualize annotations. And the other interesting thing is that you can also perform sentence splitting based on punctuation, so that you can have different sentences, but you can annotate also, you can also produce annotations covering different sentences. And in this case, okay, we have the text, the ancient Greek text, and there are a few tokens annotated, and we have 3 different layers. The first one is for name entity recognition. Each token has a label for name entity. Then there is a second layer for the lemma. So each word has also, each token has the lemma. And then there is a third layer, because in these cases, you can see the first 2 layers are for name entities and for the lemma. And I'm using the tag set provided by INCEpTION. Then I created a custom layer, because in this case, I'm interested in annotating names of ancient Greek authors and titles of ancient Greek works. And in this case, and this is the project I'm working on, I'm producing a custom layer for an ancient Greek catalog. This is, okay, a name, and I'm producing the documentation where I can, for example, like in this case, I can relate 3 different entities to produce a real entity, In this case, the name is Archestratos. Syracusius Egelos is the name of an ancient author, with Archestratos, with the two adjectives referring to the places where he was active, and I can connect these three tokens in order to annotate the fact that these three tokens belong to the name of an ancient Greek author named Archestratus. And as a third layer, I have this value, which is a CTS URN, basically an identifier that we have in the community of digital classics for identifying this specific author. Also for these CTS URNs, I don't have to talk about this. You have many sessions in Sunoikisis about these identifiers. And I can also visualize the text, okay, the chunk of text I'm annotating. Okay, this is a slide where you can see the text a bit better, because of course I can then relate the name of the author, in this case, with other tokens in the same sentence, where I have different titles of a work of Archestratus. And I can do this, relating these different elements, also with layers, where thanks to identifier I can attribute these titles to a specific author. But you have a longer description of this work in session 8 of summer 2020. The last slide is about, this is an example of the possible format behind visualization. This is a TSV file according to the WebAnno format, where in this screenshot, I see the first part of the file, where I have the sentence with the annotations. And at the beginning, you can see the three different layers for name entity, the lemma, and then the custom layer. As you can see here, this is a custom layer I have created for an ancient Greek catalog. And below, for each token annotated, I have okay, the inflected form, the token, then the name entity, the lemma, and after that, the value, in this case, the identifier, thanks to which I disambiguate this name. And basically, I'm saying that this name corresponds to the name of an ancient Greek author. So this was my last slide, and I apologize because I'm a bit over time. I used a bit more minutes. So this was the part concerning INCEpTION, WebAnno and INCEpTION. I think I'm okay. I can stop screen sharing. And here I am again. So today we are struggling with different technologies. So Valeria, I'm sorry. I talked more than 25 minutes.
No worries, Monica. Okay, so thank you, Monica. That was a really interesting examples. So what I'm gonna talk about now are other two annotation platforms that are quite different from each other, and I think that's mostly to show you other possible applications and what are the kinds of things that we could do in our research or maybe even in our teaching using web annotations, online annotations. And I'm gonna share my screen now, although I have very basic slides. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So the first tool I'm going to talk about very briefly, it's a tool that is called Hypothes.is, and I mean, feel free to go on the website and check out their very nice and cute videos that explain what is their mission and their goal. I'm going to focus more on some particular application of Hypothes. And the general concept of Hypothes is quite straightforward, and maybe in this way is also kind of powerful. And it's just about creating a layer of comments, if you like, or annotations on any website. So it doesn't have to be a text that you upload. It doesn't have to be a resource that you own. You are on the internet, you see something and you want to say something about it. And Hypothes, it's a very straightforward technology that is based on the web annotation standard developed by the W3C consortium. And it has definitely a lot of pros. And in the first place, it is very accessible. It is so simple to use. I will show you a very, very quick annotation in Hypothes. It's also quite cleverly non-intrusive. So you can choose to visualize or not these layers. So, maybe sometimes you don't want to be bothered about, the comments. You just want to see the text. And it is very discreet. It is quite sustainable. They say it is, your comments will last forever. I'm not sure about them lasting forever, but definitely the standard of web annotation is the best bet for sustainability at the moment. It is an open standard, and it's, very well, there is a large community around that. And it definitely, if we start thinking of, okay, what can we do with this tool that was not really taught for research, it was really more in my idea, in my understanding, was more developed as a sort of Uber social media, something that really gives you the opportunity to say what you think about even, websites that do not have comments, that do not allow comments and things like that. But as usual, researchers like to stretch the tools that are available and do amazing things with it. And I received an email from Charlotte Ruchet that pointed out how this conference that you can see a screenshot here was actually using Hypothes to circulate some papers beforehand, so that all the people participating to the conference could read the papers and annotate them. And then, at the conference, people would, maybe have more stimulating and, pertinent questions to ask to the speakers, and maybe also start conversations between each other. And I thought that was actually quite an interesting, very straightforward and very simple use, but I never thought about that before. And I suggested that as a potential exercise for this class. So if you feel excited about the idea of creating a layer of collaborative annotations and comments on a text, why don't you try it with one of the readings for this class? And maybe then it would be a good way to start your seminar discussion afterwards. Just a thought. But another thing, another example, another application that I wanted to focus on is actually a little bit more specific, because I think that what is really good about Hypothes is that, it's very light touch, it's very lightweight, and it is very simple, and you can say basically anything you like. Monica has shown us some, very powerful, ways of creating layers that leverage standardized and formalized languages. With Hypothes, you can basically use free text and say, whatever you like. However, even when we use Hypothes, we could actually leverage the power of using standard languages and using URIs, which are really the spine of the semantic web of linked open data scenarios. And this is a small example, a small application of Hypothes with URIs. And I'm pretty sure that you've met URIs as a concept before. If you haven't, URIs are unique identifiers that are associated to any entity, basically, that you can think of, and that are collected together in some curated authority lists. And when we talk about places, which is what we're going to do now with the example that I'm going to show you, and also with Recogito, these authority lists with URIs for places and concept of places and relationship between places are called gazetteer. So keep the gazetteers in mind. And actually, the application that I'm going to briefly show you was about a gazetteer. It was about it was within the project that is called the Heritage Gazetteer of Libya. That is a project by the Society for Libyan Studies and King's College London. And one of the things that in the past, last spring, some of the archaeology students of the Institute of Archaeology at UCL did as part of their remote internship was enriching the Gazetteer of Libya. And one of the things that we felt was a good exercise, a good way to enrich the Gazetteer was to add images to it, because yeah, it's, you know, it's good to know where a place is, and it's amazing to know its alternative place names and all that, you know, great information, especially if you're a gazetteer geek. But having images of a place really makes a difference if you're trying maybe, you know, to have it more used by the public. So I'm going to leave my slides now and take you, sorry about the infinite mirror, and take you to the Gazetteer of Libya. So for example, what we wanted was, you know, at the bottom of the page that is related to a place, for example, the city of Lectis Magna, you have photographs. Obviously, asking the students to upload photographs manually and, you know, one photo at a time was going to take a lot of time. And we didn't have that much time, and we wanted to maximize the effort. It was also a matter, if you want, of access. You know, we didn't necessarily want to give access to modify the gazetteer, you know, to modify the back end of the gazetteer to all of the students. So what the developer at King's College did was actually developing a little script that basically harvests hypothesis annotations that are done in a certain way. So, for example, if we go to Wikipedia to Wikimedia Commons, and we find a wonderful image of a place that doesn't have a photo yet, and kudos to the students of archaeology at UCL, because I had to look a lot to find one place that didn't have images, and that was, I think, before, because it was not called in the same way, and it's the circus. Do we see the circus? There it is. So our poor circus in Lectis Magna doesn't have any image, and that is totally a shame. So what we can do is go into Wikipedia, to Wikimedia Commons, and find an image that represents that place that we want to illustrate, and then we create an hypothesis annotation about it in a certain way. And what do we do? So first thing, to use hypothesis, you need to install this little widget in your browser, and it's this icon that you see here. That just means that it is active. And now your hypothesis is active, and is active on any website, any web page that you visit. And to see what's going on in this page, you just click here, and you see, you know, just a tutorial. There's nothing on this page. If there were any annotation, you would see a little number here on the H, the run annotation here. So you log in. I think I'm already logged in. Yes. And you create an annotation. But wait, the other important thing is that in hypothesis, there is a layer that is just public. That means that everyone can see it. So if you want to say, I really like this picture, or I've been this place is amazing, you should go, and you want everyone to see that, you can just do that. If you maybe want to use these annotations for something more specific, like a project like that, you may want to create a closed group. So that, you know, only people that are allowed in that group are enabled to create annotations for this purpose. So we created a group that is called HGL. So what we want to do is create an annotation within this group. And creating an annotation is really absolutely simple. You just highlight and then click on annotate. And what we're going to do is using the tags and tagging this annotation with a particular code that will interact with the script that is in the gazetteer. And we're going to say HGL image, and we're going to use the unique identifier of the place we're talking about in the gazetteer of Libya. Let's find out what it is. Is this one is 1715? Let's go back. So semicolon 1715. And then we say OK, and we say post to HGL. Now, let's see if this works. I haven't tried it yet, but whoop. And there it is, our image. We haven't looked at the backend. We haven't done, a lot of effort. We have just tagged an image in Wikimedia Commons, and the script has recognized the tag that says it is this place, 1715 in the Heritage Gazetteer of Libya, and now the image is visible to everyone. And that is just to show you a small application of Hypothesis, but also how much more powerful web annotations become when they use URIs. And now I'm going to try to give you the fastest Recogito tutorial I've ever done in my life. So Recogito is another annotation platform that was developed by the Pelagios project. The project has now ended, but the tool is still available. It has won a couple of quite fancy prizes because it is very simple to use. It is quite intuitive and it is quite flexible. So I'm going to show you very, very briefly the basic of creating annotations on text. You can also annotate images and spreadsheets, but we're not going to talk about that because we're going to focus on text. And you will find in the page of this seminar also a link to a complete Recogito tutorial. So if you, don't worry if I'm just, going really, really quickly through the functionalities, because they're all explained in detail in the tutorial. I'm more interested in showing you some of the things that you can do with Recogito than, giving you a full tutorial. But anyway, let's. So to start annotating in Recogito, you have to upload your text, and it is important that your text is in a compatible format. And the easiest bet is a TXT is a plain text format, as because I know that if you are following this series, you are probably very much interested in text and possibly text encoding. So Recogito also has a good enough compatibility with TI, XML TI documents as import and export, but maybe we'll talk briefly about that later. The simplest way to annotate a text in Recogito is just to export it in TXT and upload it as TXT. And you just, upload your new document, and we will see you can upload a single document or you can upload a group of documents. Let's look at a single document upload, and let's open this one. Okay, this is how a document looks like in Recogito. And to create an annotation is, again, really simple. You just highlight the word and you create your annotation. So I'm going to show you an annotation about places because that's what Recogito does better. And Pelagios in general was a project that was very much revolving around connecting ancient documents and ancient sources and resources according to their place references. So we definitely focused on place and how to use connections with gazetteers, which are, as we said, authority lists for place URIs. So let's find a nice place here. Troy, okay, you can't go wrong with Troy. So you just highlight it and you get this little pop-up that asks you to define the kind of relationship and annotation you're creating. Now, in this case, we know it's a place. We can create other annotations. We can also say it's none of these types of annotations. But for this demo, let's just say place. And what we get is a guess from Recogito, and he's saying, do you mean that Troy? And we're not convinced that that is the right Troy. We can't really see well, so let's click on change. We could, if we were sure, we could have just said confirm. If we were completely wrong, we could have said no, just bin it. But let's click on change. And if we go on change, we get a lot of Troy in the United States that we couldn't care about. But this is the Troy that we want. And how do we know that this is the Troy that we want? Because this is Troy as it appears in Pleiades, that is the gazetteer of ancient places. So we are definitely confident. I mean, we are also looking at it on the map. But even if we didn't have the map, we are confident that the place that is called Troy in Pleiades, it's probably the conceptually closer to what Pausanias had in mind than whatever Troy is in the United States. That is what a contemporary gazetteer might be trying to match. So let's say this is what we want to do, and we have created an annotation that has an author, as a timestamp, and is basically saying this string of letters in this text, that is the description of Greece, is a reference to this place in the gazetteer Pleiades with this URI. And we say, okay, and we have created our first annotation on Recogito. Recogito has some semi-automated functions. For example, if we want to reapply the same annotation, we can say yes. And Recogito will create other annotations for Troy. I can't see any right now, but it said there were like other 12, and you can take my word for it. They're there. Another thing that I wanted to show you quickly before I go straight into the visualizations is that there is room for tags. There is also room for comments, which are more free tags and a great way to interact. Recogito is a collaborative platform, so more users can annotate the same text, and you will see that in the exercises. One of the options that you have is that you annotate the same text as a group. That's entirely up to you. You can do it, as an individual. You can do it as a group. If you do it as a group, you will see all the annotations that other people have created appearing. So refresh the page often, and you can comment on each other annotation. But the tags are slightly more formalized, and both comments and tags can be exported when we export our annotations. And in particular, the first tag that you choose will also play a role in the visualizations. I hope that we have 5 extra minutes to talk about that. So yeah, let's see. And we have created our tag, and we say, okay. We want to reapply the tag as well. We can choose yes or no. We also have more options, and that is, all in the tutorial. Let's say yes. So now, this is pretty much all you need to know to create place annotations in Recogito. I want to show you some examples of annotations that might be, a more straightforward way to talk about it. So what happens when we have actually performed quite a few annotations? And to show that, I'm going to show you something that other students annotated. And it's actually the same text, one of the texts that I've made available for annotation, which is the 7th book of the Peloponnesian War by Thucydides. So when we have performed a substantial number of place annotations, we can start using the best feature in Recogito, which is the map visualization. And switching on the map visualization, we see on the map our place annotations. And you can notice that some places are bigger than others because they've received more annotations. If you click on the dot, you see how many annotations Sicily has received, 39, and you can browse them. You know what is, the identifier that we've used. It's this thing in Pleiades. If you want to change or correct something, you can jump back to text and look at exactly the place in the text where the annotation had been created. So why would we want to do that? Well, that's really up to why you are annotating places in an ancient text. What do you want to find out? Do you want to see what are the places that are mentioned? Do you want to see what are the places that are more mentioned than others? So you will see, their dots bigger. Do you want to discover where those places were situated so that you gain, a better understanding of, maybe ancient places that you vaguely know where they are, but you never, you were never really able to pin them on a map. There are a number of reasons why you want to do, just this simple, straightforward annotation, and they're all valid. They're all up to you. But of course, you can. We can do a little bit more. We can enrich our annotation process a little bit. For example, using the tags, as we said. So we could use the tags to actually create categories for the places that we are annotating. And these categories that we create, they may tell us something about the place, about the text, about the resources that we're looking at. And for example, I want to show you the annotation of the second book of the Iliad, that is, the catalogue of ships, that has been performed by my Pelagius colleague, Alton Barker. And you can see, all the contingents have been annotated by provenance. And that's already an informative visualization. But if we change the visualization mode using this little cog here in Recogito, we can look at the visualization by tag. And thanks to also this little legenda here, we can see, what are the places that are associated to a particular contingent. And the visualization becomes more informative. They are the same places, but we have changed the visualization mode. We have changed, the way that we look at it. We're now focusing on the tags, not just on the place mentions that we have done. Another thing that we can do with Recogito through our annotations is actually performing a little bit of comparison, because I told you that we can annotate one single file, or we can annotate a group of files all together. And if you upload a bunch of files together in Recogito, even actually text and images together, but again, we're focusing on text right now, you can compare the different parts. And that is useful because what can you do? I think you can do two different operations. Let's say that you have some texts that you think are sort of related. So you want to basically create your own little corpus. So let's say, for example, that you have a bunch of inscriptions. I think that's a likely scenario. And you upload them all in, at the same time in Recogito. And what you get are, separate files that you can singularly annotate. And these are inscriptions found in the theater of Dionysus in Athens. That's all they have in common. They have been found in the same place. They probably, belong to the same place. I don't know. But they have been annotated as single files, but they have also been visualized all together. So those separate files have somehow become your little corpus. And another visualization option in Recogito is by part. And that means that each of the files that you have uploaded together become, let's say a unit in this corpus, and you can see, what places are related specifically to a particular file. In this case, a particular inscription. But you can also do exactly the opposite operation. Let's say that you have a text and you want to split it into parts, maybe to perform an analysis, a comparative analysis of the different parts. So let's say that you have the Argonautica, and you want to see if there are differences between the 4 books. Like, what happens when we compare the places that have been, that appear in the 4 books? Does that tell us anything about the story, about the development, about the narrative, about, where the characters are, going and coming back, or whatever? Is that useful? Is that, an interesting question? I'm not going to show you the map because that's another of your exercises. And very last example for the visualizations is another mode of annotation that is available in Recogito, that it's a little bit different, and it's the relations. And the way to create relations is you need to have created 2 entities first. I see that I've already performed this test. Let me perform another test. Okay, you need 2 entities that exist already, and then you select relations here. And basically, you just go from the first to the second, and then you define the relationship. And this is, let's call it test again. You can see that there is an arrow because direction in relationships is important. And the definition of the relationship, like the tags, was completely free. I know that Recogito's developer, that is Rainer Ziemann, is based in Vienna, is working on, let's say, a little plugin for Recogito that will allow you to have a controlled vocabulary for relationships and for tags. I was thinking of, some basics cost language or your custom one, which I think is going to be a quite interesting option. But at the moment, they are completely open. Now, what's the use of annotating relations? And you can see in this is an annotation of the account of Petrus' exploration and archaeological expeditions in Egypt. And you can see that the text can get a little bit messy, especially when the entities are not really close to each other in the page. But the good thing about relations is that, like all other annotations in Recogito, they can be downloaded and exported. And when you download relations, either as a basic CSV or like a Node Edge double CSV, you can then create a network of relations. And we did that for Petri. We compared the information that we got from the network to the information that we got from the simple map visualization, and how the 2 kinds of information complemented each other. And okay, I think that was really a tour de force demo of what can you do with Recogito in text. And there is definitely much more, and there are annotation of images, but you will find everything in the tutorial. And also we always have a bit of a talk about Recogito and gazetteers in the past seasons of Recogito, so feel free to look at our past videos. And I think I might stop now. First, because it's late, and second, because there might be questions.
Yes, thank you, Valeria, and thank you, Monica. That four quite different tools with different applications. The common strand, I guess, is that these are not just annotations that you do on your desktop, but they're annotations that are designed for sharing, for collaboration, for visualization in other networks and so forth. So yeah, I think this is very cool. If there's any questions from people watching live, please feel free to ask in the live chat. The only comment I see in the live chat so far is that from Anise, who's been watching and participating in Sunoikisis for several years now, and every year Recogito is presented, and there's some new feature.
Thank you, Anise. Rainer is an amazing developer. Not even the end of the project has stopped him.
Yeah. In the meantime, while we're waiting to see if there's any other questions, does anyone in the chat, in the call, want to ask or comment anything to either presenter?
Maybe just one short thing, because Valeria mentioned Wikimedia, Wikidata at the beginning. I forgot to mention that about knowledge bases for WebAnno and INCEpTION. This is a complex concept. Knowledge bases is not so easy, but the good thing is that, for example, tools like INCEpTION are ingesting the Wikidata knowledge base, which is interesting, because of course you can build your own knowledge base, but that's the thing. Try to ingest and to use these external knowledge base, and Wikidata is very interesting. And for example, for ancient Greek, this is good because we can already find a lot of information there. I can see that by experience, also for my work on the catalog. I can find forms in the original language in ancient Greek. So this is the idea. Okay, so to use external knowledge bases like data and contributing, of course, to them. This was just a brief note.
And of course, we'll be meeting Wikimedia and its various components in more detail next week as well. We have a couple more questions in the chat now. Clifford asks, could you say a little more, I guess this is addressed to both of you, about how you might use exported fields from these annotations? He has some annotations already and would like to think about how to demonstrate to the students who created them how they can be useful.
Shall I start, Monica? Is that okay? So I don't know if you've done linguistic annotations, then I cannot, say anything too interesting to you. But if you have annotated text with Recogito, I was showing briefly that there are quite a few download options. One very straightforward thing that you could do is downloading the CSV and visualize that and, play a little bit with the layers and adding photographs already in a very straightforward Google Maps, and you can, maybe create layers in the Google Maps, or, even better in a GIS application. Or as I was saying, if you have the CSV for relations, you can, and believe me, you need a 3-minute Gephi tutorial to be able to produce a network with the relations from Recogito. I'm not a Gephi person. I understand, just the basics of network visualization, but it was really easy. It was just a matter of 3 or 4 steps. Again, if you have annotated places, you can also visualize that. For example, in Google Earth, we have KML export. Or, I don't know, you could use that as a starting point to extract an historical gazetteer that doesn't exist yet. If you have worked on, a particular corpus of documents, you might use that to extract place names and maybe start adding coordinates to them. There are quite a few fun things that you can do with students with Recogito.
Monica, did you want to add anything?
Well, yes, I agree with Valeria for my experience with Recogito, both for educational purposes, definitely, but also for scholarly purposes. I did that. I extracted data, and then I played with this data for many different reasons, for getting information to see how many places, for example, have a URI, if there are missing places, and this is the case, and how we can use this data for other authority lists, for enlarging, for example, our collection of data in the original language. And the same is also in my experience with WebAnno and INCEpTION, because we can export this data in different formats, which is good, for example, for students in the humanities. They can learn more about how we store data beyond the visualization, because of course the interface is nice, you can play with layers, you can see the complexity, but it's important always to have a sense of the data behind. So with a CSV file or a TSV file, a tabular data file, where you can see how data is stored. And on the other side, also from a scholarly point of view, the idea is to extract this data. And for example, a need we have today is to have more data in the original language. I mean, in this case, for example, Latin and ancient Greek, where we need more forms, inflected forms, more lemmata, and name entity recognition definitely is an example, because usually our dictionaries miss these forms. So there are really many different possibilities for educational purposes, I think, and for scholarly purposes. And Recogito, WebAnno, INCEpTION are different, but in the end, they can be used for similar purposes. I don't know if this helps.
Yeah, thank you. One other question from the chat. Federico asks, is Recogito suitable for just for geographic annotations, or can you do other things?
You can do other things. You don't have, for annotations that are not geographical, the same opportunity to disambiguate with an embedded list of authority. Actually, Recogito has 7 or 8 embedded gazetteers, while it doesn't have, for example, embedded prosopographies. So one thing you can do is, annotate your text and annotate the relationships with any kind of entities. That's, of course, as effective as place annotations or any other kind of annotation. Or you can, simply create annotations that say, this is a person. It's not as powerful as saying this is a person and this is, the identifier, this is the URI, but you can still create annotations and apply tags and then filter your annotation or, post-process your annotation in various other ways. You can also try small hacks. I know that people that were annotating persons, especially fictional persons that are, easier to manage than actual people, would use either the comment or the tag space to just add manually, for example, a Wikidata identifier or an external identifier that is not embedded in Recogito, but when you download the data, if you simply, if you change the name of the column and instead of comments, you call it identifiers, you end up having, the annotation with the identifiers. It's a little bit of a hack, but it can be done. It can be tried at least.
Great, yeah. And there is work, which should be said, on integrating prosopographical data in Recogito, and I don't know of any active project doing this, but certainly it would be equally possible to take an authority or a gazetteer of events, say, as we know exist, and do something similar with that, so that you can say this is an event. You type in the word marathon, and it gives you all the events that have that in the name, and it helps you to narrow them down that way, in the same way as with place. So that's certainly a possibility, either for a local customization or possibly in the future in core Recogito.
Yeah. it also, it should be said that Recogito is completely open source. It's on GitHub, and what I've showed you is the main instance of Recogito. But there are cases in which people have just forked their version of Recogito, and they've used their own gazetteers. And you could, if you have your post-typography and you want to perform this annotation, they tell me it's relatively straightforward if you have a developer to set up your instance of Recogito. And again, our developer, Rainer, would support to an extent local instantiation of Recogito if you want to get in touch.
Great, yeah. If there's no other immediate comments or questions, I might just say a few words about the exercise. If you visit the session page, which is linked in the description of this YouTube video, or you probably know about it already if you're following this as part of a course. At the bottom of this session page, Valeria has given you 3 optional exercises, 3 options for the Recogito exercise, plus 1 second optional exercise using Hypothesis. I just wanted to say a few words. If you're working in groups, as my students, for example, are, I strongly recommend that you do one of the exercises that involves annotating a text, and you make the decision about what text to annotate in your group before you start, and you all annotate the same text, so you can see what happens if you have inconsistencies, if you haven't decided on a vocabulary in advance. You can also see features such as visualizing on the map, color coding by the annotator, and things like this. I say strongly recommend, if you're one of my students, that's the required version of the exercise to do. You can do any of the 3 options, but you have to decide it in your group which of the 3 options it is, and which text you're going to use and how you're going to annotate it. I think that's a useful way to work. So I say that as a general recommendation for the 90% of people watching who are not my students. But and the hypothesis exercise also sounds fun. If we'd thought about it, we could have made for this week, instead of having a forum in which to discuss the readings, we could have had all of that discussion being done in Hypothesis. But I wasn't on the ball enough to plan that as an opportunity. It's not impossible that someone might do that as a guerrilla exercise rather than an official discussion. But that I think would be pretty cool. Do you know how well annotations of annotations go in Hypothesis? So the way you can add comments to someone else's annotation in Recogito.
I wouldn't know. I believe that is possible, but I wouldn't know. I'm a user of Hypothesis. I never spend too much time reflecting about it.
Let's experiment with that. Maybe we'll use that next year then, as part of the program. Cool. Okay, no more questions have turned up in the chat yet. So did someone start saying something?
Oh, yes, I don't know if we have time, just a brief thing. I think that yes, in Hypothesis you can do that. This is at least my memory. And another thing you mentioned is thing about group annotations, but this is a fundamental aspect of annotations, the agreement or the disagreement. So it's really very important to compare annotations, and there you can see how quite difficult to annotate text. And for example, there are also systems for the inter-annotator agreement. WebAnno and INCEpTION, for example, they include also this possibility to see automatically the agreement or the disagreement. And this is an interesting part, because of course we can have many situations where we can see a disagreement. So annotating a text is difficult, and this is the reason why it's very important to focus on your research question, and then focus on the kind of annotation you want to perform, the tag set, the layers, and this is valid for any tool you use. We have been presenting different tools, but the idea in the end is the same, okay? And the documentation, the research question, I think, are always fundamental. Otherwise, the risk is to produce really different annotations dispersed and lost in the end. So the exercise in this sense is very important, and this is not only for the students, but for the scholars also.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Great. Okay, in that case, join us again next week to learn more about the Wikimedia family of tools, so Wikipedia, Commons, Wikidata, Wikisource, and others. Thanks again to Valeria and Monica, the presenters today, and also to Irene and Paulina, who are our co-organizers on this semester, for joining us today as well. And see you all soon.